So the clip we are going to be reacting to today is called The Necessity of Forgiveness in Human Society, and this is a conversation between Douglas Murray and Jordan B. Peterson. Douglas Murray is a journalist in the UK for the publication known as The Spectator, while Jordan B. Peterson is the famous Canadian psychologist and kind of YouTube intellectual who has, kind of taken the world by storm over the past number of years. I'm curious to see what they have to say about the necessity of forgiveness in human society. I certainly think forgiveness is necessary in human society, especially right now. I think we need a lot of forgiveness these days, particularly in our political, dialogues, because people are getting nasty out there. So let's watch the clip and let's see what they have to say about forgiveness.
We have to live with each other. The left-wingers have to live with the Trump voters, and the Trump voters have to live with the identity politics types. And we have good, solid institutions, and I think we need, in the next coming months, to put out our hands to those who oppose us, knowing full well that we might be burnt in the attempt, but to do it nonetheless, and to keep doing it, because all the alternatives are much worse unless you want to see things burn.
Yeah.
And most people are moderate and reasonable.
Yes, and will feel deep embarrassment at some point if they allow their own political side to run to its extremes.
Yes.
They will, I think this about, I'm going to get stuck on him again, but I'll be very quickly. I think this about what has happened in recent weeks on the Republican right. There will be and should be some embarrassment that a Republican president, was able to stand in front of a very large crowd, mainly comprising patriots, and to say words which were, that were not incitement, direct incitement, but were real fighting talk, and raise the question of exactly what it is he thought the crowd should do. And I think everybody...
No, he didn't ever want to make that too clear, even to himself, I think. I read the speech carefully, and
yes,
it's here's what I think, this is what I would suggest you do if you were true patriots.
Right, and I think
I don't agree with that.
Reckless.
I thought it was very, very reckless, but I don't think it was
should have the
that focused
on any and all political sides to say that recklessness, you don't have to go all the way to incitement. Reckless speech, you've got to be careful with, and you've got to try to limit it, and you've got to try to call it out where you can, and not just enjoy it, because at some point it will lead to something which will humiliate you and humiliate your side, and much, much more. It will make you feel shame.
It's not a good speech,
and you want to try to avoid that. So in the madness of crowds, one of the things, as you say,
parts of it were okay,
is this, and I write a chapter on, is the importance of forgiveness. And it's quite easy when you're caught up, as you well know, when you're caught up in the sort of day-to-day fights that are going on, and the endless information and new examples and new lows that are always being hit. It's quite easy to lose sight of the deep underlying answers to some of our present traumas. But I'm absolutely persuaded that one of them lies in forgiveness. And one of the reasons I go there is, obviously we live in this society, and the social media has exacerbated it beyond all previous human belief. We live in societies which are very eager to demonstrate us and them instincts without having to leave your bed. You can shame somebody, you can try to destroy them, you can do your bit to pick up on something somebody said or once said and go for them and pummel them and destroy them and every future they've got. You can do that, but you should also know how dangerous it is. And my hope has always been that the more people saw this, the more they would step back from this manner of living. But the thing that struck me and made me write about the forgiveness thing in particular actually was something that Hannah Arendt, who perhaps it isn't a thinker I think over highly of actually. All sorts of criticisms of her, like a lot of people have. But there's a lecture that Hannah Arendt delivered in the 50s. I happened to read a few years ago, and it just made an enormous impression on me. Because Arendt says in this lecture something I think will be highly pertinent to a lot of people listening, which is that we've always, as human beings, had one worry in particular, which is how do we act in the world? How do we act in the world? How do we put one's foot in front of the other? How do we put one word in front of another and say the next one and decide what our actions should be day to day, never mind year to year? And we all have the terror of action, and young people in particular have it because they haven't tried it out enough. They haven't yet made their mistakes, and you've got to make your mistakes in order.
I'm terrified of the future.
The terror of the question of
terrified of what I'm going to do.
But Hannah Arendt says something so interesting in this lecture. She says, as human beings, we only ever really found one mechanism to make the horror of acting in the world less horrific. And that was the mechanism that we know as forgiveness, which in religious terms you can add to is also the possibility of redemption, which perhaps in a highly secularized society we ought to also think about more, not just forgiveness, but redemption.
Yes.
And I say that this is therefore something that we should all be trying to exercise in our lives, because we sure as hell know that we as individuals do not want to ourselves be treated without ever having forgiveness demonstrated to us by other people towards us. We don't want to live in a situation where when we once slip, if we once wear the wrong thing or make the wrong move or make the wrong move on someone else or say the wrong thing, we don't want to live in a world where we at any moment can destroy ourselves catastrophically and unmendably. We don't want to live in that world ourselves. So why would we expect other people to live in that world or to want to live in that world? And the mechanism, therefore, that we all have to, in our political and non-political lives, because politics damn well isn't everything, but in our political and non-political lives, we have to work at finding ways to forgive.
Yes.
And there's a lot to say about this, but this seems to me to be one of the absolute keys in our time that we all need to work on. How can I forgive a person who has done a wrong to me? How can I allow somebody else who may have made a mistake to live again? Live again? It's not the same thing, as you well know. I mean, it's not the same thing as being willfully naive. It's not about just giving people, second. It's the nature of the apology matters deeply as well, of course. The nature of the seeking for redemption or the seeking for forgiveness matters. We know that you can't just sort of say, "Oh well, yeah, that's sorry about that," and move on. That it has to be deep and deeply meant. But when a feeling of that is deeply meant and is deeply offered, it should not be retributively and deliberately, willfully smashed away in order to win a short-term political or other point.
I agree with just about everything they said in there. I do think I think forgiveness is the way out. It's the only way out. It's the only way that's ever existed, as he kind of said there. It's the only way that can cancel. It's the only thing that can actually cancel wrongs and actually stop the cycle of retributive violence and harsh rhetoric. I at the beginning of this year, I think that clip was around the January 6th riot, and that whole situation was very, very disturbing to me, and I made a video. It's called "Everyone Against the Second American Civil War, Please Stand Up." It was a very, I watch it now and I'm like, I'm glad I made it, but I also was like, I was clearly paranoid whenever I wrote the script for that video. But I still stand by that video, and it may prove to be one of the best things I've made. But I kind of just detailed how our political parties, our sides, are so, they're so vicious. And, I was just like, we have to reach out. People on the right and on the left, we've got to reach out and just simply ask for forgiveness. Even if you don't think you've done anything wrong, ask for forgiveness and just ask for dialogue. Because otherwise, it's just gonna be never-ending chaos. And I recommend you watch that video. It's like 20 minutes long. leave a card and end screen for it. But yes, I mean, forgiveness, I mean, it goes all the way back. The story of Jesus dying on the cross for the sins of humanity. I mean, that is the most powerful story of forgiveness out there. It's so radical, and Jesus knew, those who wrote the Bible knew, that forgiveness is what has to be the core of any ideology or belief system. You know, another video that I made once that, if you don't want to watch the full 20 minutes of that one video I just mentioned a second ago, another video I made was called Mr. Peace Calls for a Respectful Disagreement to Make a Comeback. It's one of my comedic characters. It's only like a minute and a half, the video, but it's I think it's good. And this was back whenever Trump was president, obviously. But, you know, the Trump era is still very relevant today, even though he's out of office. And so I think you would get a kick out of that video, and I think it would express what these fine gentlemen just expressed here. But anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I love the clip, but now I want to know, what did you think of the clip? Do you think forgiveness is necessary going forward in society, or do you think it should be thrown to the wayside? Whatever you think, leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, if you like this video, please like it and subscribe, tell your friends about the channel. And never forget to love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you.